Today we're checking out the Shure Axient Digital PSM in-ear monitor system. This is a top-of-the-line, high-end professional wireless in-ear monitor system, and this system comes with a ton of great features and a ton of new features that are pretty new to wireless technology, and a lot of stuff will make it sound better and also be more reliable. So there are two models. The dual model will have 2 stereo or 4 mono in-ear monitors in a single URAC space, and there's also the quad model, which has 4 stereo or 8 mono in-ear monitor systems in a single 1U rack space. And that actually can be expanded to 16 stereo or 32 mono in a single U rack space if you utilize Dante, which is pretty incredible. There's some pretty powerful features in this, including something called Spatial Diversity, where you have 2 transmitting antennas for more reliability and more coverage. So you have 2 transmitting antennas, and then the body packs have 2 receiving antennas. That's a ton of reliability. There's also a couple of different transmission modes. First of all, there's narrowband, which is kind of normal wireless. The body pack is sent to one frequency and the transmitter is set to another frequency and they sync up. However, they also have something called wideband, and this utilizes something called WMAS, and this allows 4 different body packs to be set to the same frequency. It'll just divide up into subgroups, and I'm definitely going to discuss that more in this video. They also have analog mode, so you can use this with the PSM 1000 body packs. This system will span the full UHF legal frequency range, so where I'm at in the United States, that's 470 to 608 megahertz, so you have the entire frequency spectrum in order to find a clear signal. It can do internal or external antenna combining, and there's reasons for each, which I'll discuss in this video. And it also does work with the Shure AD610 Showlink. This is a really cool device that you can use to send updates to the body packs without having to do a resync or be near the transmitter. There is so much that this system can do. It is pretty powerful. I'm basically going to go over this thing in detail and show you pretty much everything with this system so you can see what it's capable of. This video is meant for 3 main people. 1, if you're interested in getting one of these systems. 2, if you have one and you're interested in all the features that it has and how to set it up properly. And 3rd, if you're just interested in seeing what's available for in-ear monitors at the highest level, top-of-the-line, high-quality wireless in-ear monitor systems. It's pretty cool to see all of the features that this thing has. Really quick, I do just want to mention that this is Shure's first venture into digital in-ear monitor systems. There is so much misunderstanding about what the term digital wireless means. There's so much misunderstanding about it that I specifically made a video going over the differences of analog and digital. If you don't know the differences, I highly recommend that you watch that video. However, the TLDR is that digital is a lot cleaner sound with less noise. If you've ever used in-ear monitors and you heard that, you won't get that with the digital in-ear monitor system, so it's a much cleaner sound. It is also capable of a more natural and full sound, so it's able to transmit the full 20 hertz up to 20 kilohertz. Analog is not able to do that. And also digital is much more spectrally efficient, meaning that you can use more systems at once, and it's more likely to find a clear signal compared to analog. And that's even before this new wideband WMAS, which makes it even more spectrally efficient. So for the structure of this video, I'm basically going to be starting from scratch as if you got a brand new unit, and we're going to go over kind of the normal stuff first. But as the video goes on, that's when I'll explain WMAS and wideband and narrowband, spatial diversity and antenna combining and all of that stuff. But let's set up a few things in the default mode that this boots up in. I do want to say many thanks to Shure for sending this over so that I can make this video. I have been using it for the last couple of weeks. This system does live up to its hype. It's pretty incredible, and I'm going to go over it in detail to see if this is something that's right for you and your needs. If you are interested in purchasing one, there are going to be links down below in the description. Consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this in the future, and let's go ahead and check out the Shure Axient Digital PSM in-ear monitor system. First, let's do a quick overview of the ports on the back. You have 8 analog inputs, and these are combo XLR or 1/4-inch inputs. If you have the dual unit, you will just see 4 of the combo jacks. You do have a switch right here that you can use to set it from analog inputs or switch it to AES3. I'm going to set this to analog because that's how I've been using it. On the quad unit, you'll see you have 4 different antenna ports labeled A through D. If you have the dual, there will be 2. You also do have 2 Dante ports. One is a primary and one is a secondary. And you do also have these ports for connecting an Ethernet cable, so you can connect to a network or use with wireless workbench and stuff like that. You have this spot right here for plugging in just the standard IEC cable. There are 2 different models. The one that I have has the option for AC power cascade, so you can cascade multiple units together. But there is also a model with DC power input if you need that. On the body pack receivers themselves, each one that you get is going to come with a pair of the SB910 batteries. These are going to give you over 5 hours of battery life, and when you put them in, you just want to make sure that you put them in from the top, not from the side. You have two antennas on the body packs, and something really nice about these is that they can detach, which is very nice. If the antenna happens to get damaged, you just replace the antenna, not the entire unit. And also the headphone port is threaded, so if you do have an in-ear monitor earbud system that has a threaded connection, you can actually thread that in so that it stays connected and you don't have to worry about these accidentally getting unplugged. And there also is this charging bay that you can get for the batteries. This one is really nice because you can either just put the receiver packs right into the charging bay, or you can take the batteries out and charge those as well. All right, so let's go ahead and power this up. And while it's booting up, I just want to let you know that I'm personally using two of the half-wave antennas on this. Just for this demo, I think most people will use a helical or a paddle antenna or something like that, but just letting you know how I have this set up. So a couple of controls here. This is your main jog wheel that you can use to change menus and go into different menus. You also have an exit and enter button over here, and you have 4 different function buttons right here, and you'll see how those work in a little bit. Over here, you do have a headphone port as well with a volume knob. And then one thing that's really nice about this system is it just has a quick RF mute. You can flip this switch right here, and now the RF is muted. It's really nice that you can now do a scan with the RF muted, or if another band is playing, you just want to quickly mute the RF. Very convenient that you can do that with this switch right here. So one of the first things I like to do is just name all the channels just for organization. So I'm going to go to the first channel here, and then I'm going to go down to channel name. And I'm going to name this one. This is going to be my channel. And then push enter in order to confirm that. They make this really nice because they have this next button down here. So I can just click that, and now I'm on channel 2. I'm going to name this one Danielle. I'm going to go ahead and just name all 4 of these off screen. So now you can see that I have all 4 of my channels named now. Next thing that I usually like to do, so I'm going to go into channel 1 and then go under the audio settings. So this is where you're going to want to set which mode you're going to be using. Are you going to be using mono or stereo? This is going to be a stereo mix. The input selection, are you using the inputs on the back from the rear panel, or are you using Dante? You're going to want to set that there. And then analog sensitivity and gain, you just want to get your gain set properly. You can set the sensitivity to line or aux. And then you can choose how much gain you need. You can go up to 16 decibels and go down as low as -20 decibels. So I just have my phone plugged in the back, playing just a little bit of music. And you can see I can see my audio levels right here. So just to set your gain accordingly. So likely be different when you get to the show, but just get a general idea. I do find in my experience with using it, I do like to set it somewhere between 5 and 10. But just get that set up accordingly. And remember, you can push the next button in order to get to channel 2, channel 3, and channel 4. Previous and next over here are definitely very helpful to know. Okay, so next up, I'm going to do a scan from the body pack. Don't forget to turn your RF power off when you do a scan because you don't want it to accidentally detect those frequencies. So on the body pack, go ahead and click this button, and then let's go under radio. One thing just to check really quick is just to go down to advanced RF and go to RF band, and just make sure you are set to the correct RF band. I'm in the United States. The G57 band is the full UHF legal frequency range here in the US. So just check that really quick. Let's go ahead and back out of that. But under radio, go down to spectrum scan, and then go to scan now. So now it's going to do a scan of the RF environment. So when it's done scanning, it actually gives you this graph showing you visually how the RF environment looks, which is really cool. You can scroll through here and you can see this is a pretty clean RF environment here. At 584.625, the noise floor is at -82, so pretty much all of these are good. This gives you a graph, and you can push the O button, and you can set the zoom, so you can zoom in up to 64x, but let's say just like 8x, and now I can zoom in and get even finer detail of just the RF environment. But now that is done, and if you ever need to see it again, you can go to spectrum scan, and then just go to recall, and it'll show you what your last scan was. But after you've done the scan, let's go ahead and sync it and send it to the transmitter. The easiest way to do that in the current mode that we're set to is go to this little secondary menu right under the main menu, click that, and then go to spectrum scan, and then sync scan from the receiver. Something really nice is they actually have the IR port here in the back. So I'm going to push sync and then line up the 2 IR ports. It'll say success on the screen when it works. And now all of that scan data has been sent to the transmitter. So I can go down here and go to view scan. So now I can see the scan on the transmitter. You can push in on the jog wheel and set a cursor so that you can move around. The text is pretty tiny. My camera probably won't pick that up too well. But you can see this white bar shows what frequency I'm currently transmitting on. I can also push in on the jog wheel and set it to zoom, and now the jog wheel will zoom in. So I can set it to zoom or cursor mode. So now the transmitter has the scan data, and you can send that to something like Wireless Workbench. This isn't a video on Wireless Workbench. If you need help using Wireless Workbench, I have a whole video going over that. Check out that video if you want to see how to set up Wireless Workbench. But for this video, let's do all of the RF coordination on the device itself without the software. But I'm just going to go ahead and hit group scan. You can do channel scan or delete scan as well, but I'm going to hit group scan. There are 3 different groups in here. Group 1 is standard, group 2 is max channels, and group 3 is robust. This is calculated based on the spacing between each different frequency. This is going to make a little bit more sense later. This is the way that I personally do it. If robust has enough open channels for your setup, I would go with that. If you need more than that and the RF environment is pretty crowded, try the max channel setting. Do keep in mind this is just for the scan of the in-ear monitor system. If you're using other wireless systems, you're probably going to want to use something like Wireless Workbench in order to coordinate all of your frequencies. But for this video, I'm just going to go with just the standard one. And then you're going to hit deploy. And now it has sent that new frequency to all 4 of the channels. And yes, I'm currently in wideband. That's why it says it's frequency 604.150 megahertz. And then the 4 different channels are set to 4 different sub-channels. It trips you out when you first see this, but that is correct and that is how it works. Remember, I'm going to go over some of the different mode options later. This is the default mode that it loads up in. So that's what we're starting with. So let's go ahead and unmute the RF. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sync to all of them. So I'm going to go to channel 1. And I'm just going to push sync. And I'll put my pack right here. And then it says sync success. And you can see that it sends over the name as well as the correct frequency. I'm going to go next and then push sync. This will be for the second body pack. This is Danielle's body pack. And you can see now it says Danielle and the frequency is set correctly. That would do the same thing on the next one. Push next, hit sync for Jason. Push next and hit sync for Trevor's pack. And now all 4 of my packs are set up correctly. But let me show you how to do this process if you have Showlink. So in order to connect Showlink to the transmitter, you just want to connect a shielded Cat5 cable from one of the control ports into the back of the Showlink. And you can see that it'll actually send power to the Showlink. And the AD610 does not need extra power. The Axient Digital transmitter is actually going to provide power to the Showlink. Now when you have Showlink connected and you do the sync process, so I'm going to do that on this channel for the Scott channel, you're going to see all of this information down here. You'll see the battery life, the quality of the signal strength. You'll see that my RF is peaking because I have the antennas right by the transmitter antennas, but that's what I have to do for this video. So you can see when I'm twisting my volume knob, it's showing up on the transmitter as well. One of the things that's really great about this is if I go into here and I change the frequency that it's on, so I'm going to set it to 595.600, and you're going to see when I confirm that, Showlink is automatically going to send that over to my body pack. I don't have to do the sync process. If I change the frequency, if I scan for a new channel, it will automatically send that over via the Showlink. Very cool and saves a ton of time. So once you've linked the body packs to the transmitter for the first time, Showlink will send over that info going forward. So I'm quickly just going to connect all 4 packs, and you can see I have info on all 4 of the body packs now. But watch, when I do a scan for a new frequency and I hit deploy, it's going to update all of those body packs. All of those body packs are going to be set to the new frequency that I found with the scan. And yes, they are all set to the same frequency. That's how wideband WMAS works. They're just on different sub-channels. Pretty trippy, and I'll go into more detail about that here in a minute. Before we go on, let's set up a few more things on the pack. So let's go under your menu, go down to audio. In the mode, you do want to set this correctly. If you are set to stereo, you want to set to stereo. If you're set to mono, are you plugged into just the left input or just the right input? It's actually really nice that they do it this way. Normally you have to set it to mono and then pan all the way to the left or pan all the way to the right. In this mode, you actually just say, hey, I'm plugged into the left or I'm plugged into the right. And you also do have mix mode, which is like a dual mono mode. This is where you could set if you wanted to hear more of what's plugged into the left input or more of what's plugged into the right input. But in this case, This is set to stereo. Here under the audio settings, scroll down until you get to gain trim. So here's where you can boost or cut the signal going into this pack. And you can see it's actually really nice when you adjust the level. It tells you where you're at on the pack as well as the decibel reading, which is cool. So if you need to boost this a little bit by like 5 decibels or something like that, you have that as an option. And then going back down, there is also the limiter. So you can set the threshold at 0 dB full scale, or you can actually go down all the way down to -48. And it is nice because I'm sending audio into this, and it does tell me that I am hitting the limiter at these settings right here. So set up your limiter if you want one. Might be nice just to have one set at 0, just to protect your hearing. And then on the body pack display screen, you can see the name, the frequency that you're on. You can see the audio and the RF signal. You also get a battery reading as well as what your pack is currently set to for volume. So that's some of the main initial setup stuff to do. However, we haven't gotten to the most important part, in my opinion, which are the different operational presets. This is where you really unlock the power of this thing. So this is where we determine if we want to work with wideband or WMAS or narrowband or analog or spatial diversity or antenna combining and all of that stuff. Some of those words probably didn't make sense, so I'm going to explain what some of those mean so you know what each of the modes do and how you can decide which one is best for you and your needs. So first of all, there's 4 modes. There's wideband, there's narrowband, there's analog, and there's also Axient Digital Standard. Let's do narrowband first. That's the easiest to understand. This is kind of normal mode. This is what we're all used to for wireless. One frequency, the transmitter and the receiver are set to the same frequency. That's how they communicate with each other. If your transmitter is set to 500.100 megahertz, the receiver is also set to 500.100 megahertz, and it works. But we do have to think about the spacing between those frequencies when we're using narrowband mode and we're using more than one wireless at once. So if one of the packs is set to 500.100 megahertz, does that mean that you can just set the next one to 500.125 megahertz? No, they need to be spaced out enough in order for different wireless systems to work all at once. So in narrowband mode, the frequency itself is 200 kilohertz wide. However, Shure included this nice graphic to help make this make sense visually. It's not just transmitting at exactly 200 kilohertz. There's a tiny bit of spillover from the RF noise. The way that you do this is you measure from the center of the frequency, and generally what the idea is that you actually want to space your frequencies out by 350 kilohertz minimum. So for example, if we have one that's transmitting on 500.100 megahertz, the next one needs to be transmitting at 500.450 megahertz. Next one needs to be set to 500.800 megahertz, and so on and so forth. That is the minimum spacing that you need between the different frequencies. So with narrowband mode, within a 6 megahertz frequency block, you can fit 17 narrowband frequencies in narrowband transmitters and receivers in a 6 megahertz block. It's already pretty good, and it's already a massive improvement over analog, which was 9. So now with wideband, this incorporates something called WMAS, which was just recently approved by the FCC, and this is a new way to transmit and receive wireless signals. So instead of having 4 separate narrowband frequencies, they're all transmitting a 200 kilohertz block, but they need to be spaced out 350 kilohertz. What WMAS does is it allows you to transmit a wide 800 kilohertz block, and then it divides that up into 4 separate sub-channels to go to 4 separate body packs. So you can kind of think of it as like 4 200 kilohertz frequencies all squished together to make one 800 kilohertz frequency block. It is really wild to see this. You'll see that each body pack is set to the same fundamental frequency, but they're just set to different sub-channels or subgroups. Using WMAS and wideband, this is how it works. You have a single wideband 800 kilohertz frequency block, and 4 different wireless transmitters can fit within this one block. Keep in mind, if you're using this with the dual, you can still use wideband, and then it would just be 2 in a 400 kilohertz frequency block. But in my case, it's 4 in an 800 kilohertz frequency block. So this makes it even more spectrally efficient, which is pretty crazy because digital itself already is more spectrally efficient than analog wireless. So remember with narrowband digital, we can get 17 frequencies within a single 6 megahertz block. With WMAS, you can actually fit 28 frequencies, 28 stereo in-ear monitor systems can fit within a 6 megahertz block. That's already an improvement over narrowband digital, which was 17, and that's way better than analog mode, which was 9. Pretty crazy how that works. You just have to space them out by 800 kilohertz each. Remember we did the group scan and it said standard, max channels, or robust. So that ties into the spacing. In narrowband, you have to space them by 350 kilohertz. In wideband, they're going to be spaced 800 kilohertz apart. If you use standard or robust, it's going to space them out a little bit more. That's what that means with the groups. And there's also analog mode, which is very similar to like a PSM 1000. So why would you want that instead of digital? So two reasons. First of all, if you still have the PSM 1000 body packs, you can actually sync that to the system. So if you already have like the PSM 1000, you want to slowly transition over, and then start to switch over to the ADXR body packs if you wish to go that route. But the other reason is if you want to have truly the lowest latency possible. So if you're using digital transmission, the latency is less than 2.9 milliseconds. If you set it to analog, it is now less than 1.29 milliseconds of latency. I need to do a separate video on this because people get so scared of the word latency written on paper. You cannot hear 2.9 milliseconds of latency. It is possible if you compound latency. If you have wireless mics going into a Dante system, into a digital mixer, into a digital in-ear monitor system, those can stack up onto each other. However, I've been using this with digital wireless microphones and the digital in-ear monitor pack. I hear no latency with this system at all. Most people cannot hear 10 milliseconds of latency. I definitely don't hear it. This tends to be something that people kind of freak out when they see it on paper. However, if you're in a situation where you truly need the lowest latency possible, this is an option for that. And last but not least, there's also the Axient Digital Standard Mode. This is also called point-to-point, and this allows the PSM transmitters to send signal to the Axient Digital receiver. So if you have like an Axient Digital dual or quad receiver meant for like microphones and guitars and body packs and stuff like that, you can actually use the PSM system as the transmitter, and those would be the receivers. So those are the 4 different modes, but there also are a couple other options in these operational presets. So there is also an option for spatial diversity. With spatial diversity, it makes use of 2 transmitting antennas. And I think this actually makes sense to show you on the transmitter itself. So with spatial diversity on, it's going to take channels 1 through 4. It's going to send them to a single frequency, and then it's going to output the RF on 2 separate antennas. In this case, it's going to be antenna A as well as antenna D. Now, if I go in here and I turn spatial diversity off, just for channel wideband, if I set it to this, it's going to take channels 1 through 4, set them to a single frequency, and transmit it only to antenna A. It's not going to transmit it to both antenna A and D like it does with spatial diversity. Spatial diversity on is 2 antennas, spatial diversity off is a single antenna. So with spatial diversity, it allows you to transmit the wireless RF on 2 separate antennas. So you could use that to point like one at the main stage and then the other one to a secondary stage or something like that. Or if you have like, a stage that has like a catwalk. So you can use this to cover multiple different coverage zones, or just use it just to have more reliability, because now you have 2 transmitting antennas, and then on the body packs, you have 2 receiving antennas. So that's what spatial diversity does. You can have that on or you could have that off. I'll go over why here in a minute, because it actually applies to the next part where we're talking about internal or external antenna combining. So normally with in-ear monitor systems, you have multiple ones in a rack and you want to connect all of them to an antenna combiner. One of the worst things you can do for wireless is have a ton of antennas all next to each other. It causes an antenna farm, which causes dropouts, less range, and stuff like that. So most of the time with in-ear monitors, you want to combine them all to a single antenna, or in this case, we have dual antennas with spatial diversity. The ADPSM system does allow you to set up internal combining for the antennas, but you can also set it to external combining for the antennas. Again, I think this makes the most sense by showing the graph on the system itself. Props to whoever designed that at Shure, because it just makes so much sense with all of the info they give you in all of these different operational presets. Let's go over that. So this is actually easiest to show you with narrowband first. So this first setting right here shows you that each of the 4 channels goes out on its own antenna output. Channel 1 is set to frequency 1, that goes out antenna A. Channel 2 is set to its own frequency as well, and that one outputs to antenna B, and so on and so forth. That's just narrowband mode. That's regular. You'd want to go to an antenna combiner with that. However, when you switch to this mode, this is narrowband combined. So channels 1 through 4 are all going to be on their own frequencies, and all 4 of those frequencies will be internally combined to output on the A antenna. Each frequency goes out to its own antenna. With this mode, with combined, it does internal combining down to the A antenna output. You do also have the exact same thing with analog. If you use analog mode, you can see you have analog mode regular and then analog mode combined. And just in case if you're wondering, if for example I'm in narrowband mode, Showlink does work with narrowband mode as well. If I do a scan and then deploy, it's going to update all 4 of those frequencies automatically without me having to go sync to the transmitter. Showlink is really, really cool to have. So that brings up the question, why would you ever not want to use some of the internal antenna combining? Why would you ever want to use the external antenna combining? So they have different combiners for the Axient Digital PSM in your monitor system. There's an 8-port antenna combiner, and there's also a passive 2-to-1 antenna combiner and splitter. So why would you want to use that? So with internal antenna combining, it will decrease the amount of RF power you're capable of getting with this system. And let's look at it. Again, that graph just makes so much sense. They have this in the upper right. So for example, in narrowband with no combining, you can get 10 milliwatts for low, 10 milliwatts for normal, and then 40 milliwatt transmission at high. However, if you use narrowband with combining, you still get 10 milliwatts low, 10 milliwatts normal, but then the max you can set the RF power to on high is 20 milliwatts. That's the maximum you can set it to. And again, you're going to see this transmission power on all the different modes that you use. So if you need higher RF power output, you would want to use an external combiner. If you want the simplicity and the convenience of internal antenna combining, you would want to use the internal antenna combining. And just something to keep in mind with like RF output power, if you're using wideband, so the WMAS mode, that RF power is actually divided among the 4 different channels, or the 4 different sub-channels is the way to think about it. So if you set it to 10 milliwatts in WMAS, that's actually 2.5 milliwatts per each different sub-channel. Or if it's set to 100 milliwatts, that's actually 25 milliwatts for each sub-channel. And that makes sense why one of the modes you can actually set it to 200 milliwatts, because it actually is divided to 50 for each sub-channel. Because at least where I'm at in the United States, you can't use something over 50 milliwatts without having to get a license. So if you see 200 milliwatts in wideband, it actually is divided by 4, and each subcategory is going to get 50 milliwatts of RF power. Just something to keep in mind. And I have tested this with just the 200 milliwatt setting, and that was in wideband, so technically my pack was at 5 milliwatts, and it goes so far, just even on a single half-wave antenna. I didn't even use like a paddle antenna or a directional or a helical antenna. The range on these are truly incredible, even at a lower RF output power. With the shows that I've used that at recently, I didn't have to set it over 20 milliwatts of power, so 5 milliwatts each. I'm a full-time musician. If I got hired to do a tour or something like that, and I was the one who was providing the in-ear monitor setup, I would base my RF output power on the size of the coverage and how far you had to go and spatial diversity and stuff like that. There is still one more thing to cover. Anytime that you see 2 frequencies in here, this is where you can unlock the extra frequencies so you can get up to 16 stereo channels. And obviously to do that, you would have to use Dante because you only have, the 8 XLR analog ports on the back. Just keep in mind, in order to do this, you do have to unlock a license. So you have to log into your Shure Cloud account and you have to purchase those licenses in order to use these extra frequencies. And just keep in mind that is a one-time purchase. That is not a subscription model, but you do have to set that up. I'll go over where you would turn that on here in a little bit. That is so much information, I know, but that's part of the power of the system. There's so many different operational presets that you can use to fit in different situations for what works best for you or the RF environment of where you're performing at. So now that you understand all of the terms, let's go over all of the different mode options that they have in this. All right, so let's go over each of the modes so you can see what the options are now that you understand all the terms. So go under your main menu, go to Device Configurations, Device RF, and then Operational Preset. So this is the way it boots up normally in 4-channel wideband with spatial diversity. This is the main mode that I was using. There's no one-size-fits-all, but that's why I started in this one because I think it'll probably be one of the most common ones. And this is where you can see up here at the top that I have the different RF levels. So the RF level set to low will be 10 milliwatts, normal will be 20 milliwatts, and then high will be 100 milliwatts. Remember, in wideband mode, that will be divided by the number of sub-channels. There will be a menu that I go over later that will show that, but just remember to do that division if you're using wideband mode. But then when we switch up, so I'm going to push in and I'm going to switch up to 4-channel wideband with no spatial diversity. You can see now low is 10 milliwatts, normal is 40 milliwatts, and then high is 200 milliwatts. So the trade-off for more RF power is you do not get spatial diversity, and this will only output to the A antenna. Next up, we have 4-channel wideband spatial diversity with 2 frequencies. So if you unlock channels 5 through 8 over Dante, you can see that channels 1 through 4 will go to frequency 1, and then your 2 antennas would be antennas A and C. And then channels 5 through 8 would be on its own WMAS 800 kilohertz frequency block, and those are going to go to antennas B and D. But you can also do this where you have combined them. WMAS frequency 1, WMAS frequency 2, and they will be combined to antennas A and D. Just keep in mind, you will lose a little bit of RF power. At high, you can only set that to 20 milliwatts. If you utilize internal combining, without the internal combining, you can set it to 40 milliwatts. So just make the decision that's right for you and your needs. Next up, we have 4-channel wideband with 2 different frequencies. 4 channels, frequency 1 will be on the A antenna. Channels 5 through 8 will be the second frequency on the D antenna. No spatial diversity with that, but you get a higher RF output. You can do the same thing and combine those to a single A antenna. And again, with combining, it does reduce the RF power capabilities. So always remember to check this text up in the upper right. Next up, we have 4-channel wideband with 4 frequencies. If you want to unlock all 16 stereo channels in this with Dante, each of those are going to transmit to their own antennas. Channels 1 through 4 will go to antenna A, 5 through 8 will go to antenna B, and so on and so forth. So those were all the wideband WMAS ones. Let's go to some of the narrowband ones. We've gone over this one. This is narrowband, just kind of normal. Each channel goes out its own antenna. You would likely want to use a combiner with this setup, or you can combine them down to a single antenna internally. You can set up narrowband with spatial diversity, but do just notice that on the quad, it actually just drops it down to 2 channels. You can only use 2 channels with narrowband spatial diversity. Frequency 1 will go to A and C antennas. Channel 2 will go to antennas B and D. But you also can combine those to just go out antennas A and D. But again, with narrowband spatial diversity, this now drops to a 2 stereo wireless IEM system. Analog, we already went over. It's the exact same thing as narrowband. Do notice there's no spatial diversity in analog mode. You just have analog or analog combined. And you also have the Axient Digital standard mode. And that also is the exact same as narrowband and analog. You have either normal, channel 1 goes to antenna A, channel 2 to antenna B, or you can combine them to just a single antenna. And those are all of your different operational presets that you have in the Shure Axient Digital PSM system. See which 4 modes you want, and if you want spatial diversity, and if you want to unlock some of the other frequencies. And watch your RF power output. This graph is put so well together and makes a lot of sense once you know how to read it. Props to whoever designed that. And then watch your RF levels up here at the top. And just FYI, you can set your power in wideband mode. You can go here and you can choose the RF system gain. And this is where you can set it to either normal, high, or low. And it's very nice that it gives you all of this information right here. This menu is helpful for more than just setting the RF level. You can see which operational preset you're in, the net output for each channel or each sub-channel if you're using wideband. And if you do connect with a combiner, it's going to show some of that info here. That antenna combiner is really cool because it'll like self-calculate how much signal loss and how much it needs to add in order to compensate for the signal loss. I'm not going to go over that in this video, but I'll link to a video down below that'll discuss it more. Pretty cool what it does. So this menu is also worth knowing about. Something very nice is that the antenna ports on the back will have a green light up when they are active. That's very helpful to make sure that you know that you are connected to the right antennas when you're in different modes. My camera's having a hard time picking that up, but you can see that the A and D light are lit up because those are the 2 antennas that I'm using since I'm using spatial diversity. And also the ADPSM manual has multiple different graphs of showing you how you can connect them based on your goals, how many antennas are you combining, and stuff like that. Just keep in mind when you do set this up into a different operational preset, you are going to have to relink your body packs so that they make sure that they're set to the same transmission mode and the same way that you're deciding to use it. Which one is right for you? There is no one size fits all. That's why there's so many different options in here. How much RF power do you need? I think that's one of the most important ones. Do you need to cover multiple zones? That's when you would want to use spatial diversity. I personally, just when I've been using it, I've been using wideband. It's also just really cool just how that works and how spectrally efficient that is. Narrowband can be really nice if you're in a very crowded RF environment. You have to find just little slivers to put in different frequencies. That's an option. Analog I would only use if you really need to get the lowest latency possible. I personally think that the benefits of digital make it definitely the way to go, but it's nice that they have that as an option. It's up to you. It does make sense that it defaults to wideband with spatial diversity because I think that's one of the most useful ones in my opinion. However, it's very nice that they have all sorts of different options for you. I've personally been using the internal antenna combining myself. All right, that's the most important part, but let's go over some of the other settings on the Axient Digital PSM system. Just FYI, if you are finding this video helpful, do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It only takes a second and it truly does help out the channel and I would appreciate it. But let's go over some of the other settings. Some of these settings will change based on the mode that you're in. So I'm going to cover most of this with wideband, but I'm going to show you some of the options if you're in some of the other operational presets. So we know how to set the RF power in wideband mode. What about all the other modes? So let me go ahead and set this to narrowband combined. I'm going to hit enter and it will have to reboot. So now you can see I've rebooted in narrowband mode and that menu actually is not there anymore. So in that case, you want to go to the individual channels right here in order to set them up. So on my channel, click that. And then in this case, I would go down to RF system gain. On this individual channel, I can choose low, normal, or high. So if I want this one, for example, to be on high, but then the next one on Danielle's channel, I can set that one to normal. Next one, normal. And then channel 4, I could set that one to low if I wanted to. So with narrowband, you can set them individually and you can see that here under the power. Keep in mind, you can also set the RF power individually in analog mode as well. Let me go ahead and reboot it into 4-channel wideband spatial diversity. Just something to keep in mind while this is rebooting. Don't just set your RF power to the highest, because if you don't have to go that far, you can actually overload the body packs and get dropouts with like other wireless or something like that. If you're blasting too much RF power, it can actually cause more problems. So just make sure you set your RF power levels properly. So now that I'm back in wideband mode, this menu right here, you can actually click that and get into this menu right here. Or you can also go from the main menu and then go to this 1 through 4 carrier settings menu. It's the exact same thing. If you do unlock the extra channels, you'll see 5 through 8 carrier settings, 9 through 12, and 13 through 16 here. You'll see an extra menu here. But when we are in this menu here, under the radio settings, you can choose your group. And it is really nice. It reminds you that 1 is full range standard, 2 is full range max, and then 3 is full range robust. And then you can also choose your channel number if you would prefer to do that. I'm going to hit exit because I don't want to change that. You can also manually set the frequency as well if you would prefer to go that route. You can turn off the RF power here as well. You can also set the RF output level in this menu as well. Backing out, you can also, while you're on this screen, you can also hit edit and you can change your frequency, group, and channel right here if you would like. I'm going to just cancel out of that. RF system gain, we went over this. This is still just a really helpful menu just to be aware of. And then the spectrum scan, we went over earlier. You can view your scan, you can also delete it. And this is where you could do a group or a channel scan. So now on the individual channels, you can either edit them by going to one of the channels. If I wanted to go to Jason's channel and I could click in order to start editing, or I could also go under the main menu and choose Jason's channel. They're all going to be the same thing. And again, I really like that they give you this previous and next button down here so that you can cycle between the different channels. And each menu channel is the exact same. So under the audio, we went over actually all of this earlier. There are a couple more menus down here that we didn't go over. The meter overload hold. If I turn that on, if you get any sort of overload signal, it'll stay there until you clear it. You'd have to clear the clip in order to get rid of it. And I can actually show you that really quick with the tone generator. So with the tone generator, you can set it to either 400 hertz or 1 kilohertz. And then you can choose the level that you want to set that at. So if I start bringing this up to 0, you can see that I'm now clipping, and I bring that back down and turn it off. You can see that I have a clip indication over here. And the only way to get rid of that is to hit clear clip. So it can definitely be really nice to see if, hey, have you ever clipped the signal? The tone generator is nice because you can actually just turn that on and walk around the venue and check for dead spots if it ever drops out. Let's go ahead and exit out of this. We went over channel name already. For receivers, this is where you can see which packs are linked to this, which ones are linked to this channel. With all the menu changes that I've done throughout this video, I just need to resync really quick. But I've synced to this and you can see how many receivers that I have that are synced to this. And I can have up to 8 different receivers linked to this channel. Sync presets. So this is what do you want to send over to the body pack when you do a sync. So it'll send this information over when you do a sync. So you have all of these settings. These are going to make more sense once we go over the body pack in a little bit. But let's say, for example, that when I sync, I want to send that it's always going to be stereo. I always want to make sure that this is in stereo. So you can see that my pack is currently set to mono left. That's how it's currently set. If I do a sync, now it did a sync, and you can see that it said, hey, send over that we are now using this in stereo. So that can definitely be very helpful what do you want to send over when you do a sync. If it says no change, the body pack won't change. But if you want to update what the body pack is currently set to, you would set that here. Definitely very helpful. Under the advanced setting, there is channel tile preference, which will just show you a different receiver first over here on the left. The main reason why I think you would want to do this is if you're in analog mode, you can actually do legacy sync, and then you can sync with one of the PSM 1000 packs. So if you have a PSM 1000, that's how you would sync it to the Axient Digital transmitter system and make sure that you're set to analog mode. So if we go under the main menu, we have a couple of other options. If you scroll all the way down, you get to your headphone monitor. And in here, this is where you can control what you're hearing out of the headphone port right here. You can choose channel 1, channel 2, 3, or 4. You can adjust the gain here, as well as set a limit threshold on the headphones. But let's go back up to the top, and we're going to go to our device configuration. So we're going to go through all of the menus that we have here. So under device RF, remember operational preset is that really important one. But there are a couple other things in here that we can do. We can load the spectrum manager. Now I don't have one, but this is where you could enable it if you have one connected. So also under the device RF menu, we also have encryption. This is where you can turn it on or off. Do keep in mind, if you do decide to turn it on, it'll apply to all channels. It'll unlink the receivers and you have to resync them after changing encryption modes. I'm not going to do that, but that's where you would set it up if you needed to set it. TV format down here, by default, it's set to no TV. I set this to 6 megahertz because I'm in the United States and that's what we have, but there's also 6 megahertz Japan, 7 or 8 megahertz. I'm going to just leave that on 6. This isn't a huge detail, but under the frequencies, if I go under radio and I start changing the frequency in the channel that I'm on, you can see that I'm on TV 31. This one's on TV 23. So if I know that I have to avoid certain TV channels in a certain area, it's helpful to know. So I like to actually have that on. But those are all of your device RF settings now. Let's go ahead and go back out. And now under device configuration, we have device audio. So the rear panel inputs, if you go into this menu, this is where you can turn on a ground lift if you need it. Very helpful that they have that. And then you see the switch position is set currently to analog. Remember that switch position in the back? I have it set to analog because that's how I'm using it. But if I switch it to the AES3, you can see it tells me the information here and gives me some data about AES3 if you're using it that way. You also have settings for Dante. This isn't a video about Dante, but these are some of your settings for Dante if you are using this with Dante. Next up is device ID. This is where you can give it a name. So I could call this, Scott ADTQ or something like that if I wanted to. But this is helpful if you're using it with like wireless workbench or something like that and you have multiple ones that are connected. Giving it a device ID is helpful. And speaking of wireless workbench, this is where you would go to your network configurations under this menu right here. So it gives you a summary of your IP address, your Dante, and your switch configuration. You can click here to go to setup and you can change some of this. I can hit next and I can choose if I want this to be automatic or if I want to manually set the IP address and stuff like that. Remember, this isn't a video about wireless workbench. If you want to find out how to set up wireless workbench, watch my video on that. This is where you also have setup for your Dante primary and Dante secondary. Next up, we have network services. This is where you would turn the cloud connectivity on or off. So if you do want to unlock those other frequencies that you can use via Dante, this is where you would do it. You would turn it on, and then you would connect to a computer or a network with Ethernet, log into your Shure cloud account, and then you would add your devices. This video is already going to be long enough, so there are detailed instructions written in the manual on how to set this up if you need to do this. But just make sure that your cloud connectivity is on if you need to add those licenses. Next up, we have the network browser. So going into here, you can see all of the devices that are connected to the network in the back. So you can see I currently just have one Axient Digital, but if I had multiple ones connected, I could hit identify all, and they'll all flash to make sure that they're all connected to the network. You can make sure that everything is working properly if you have them connected. And you can also see your firmware version right here as well. Next up, we have locks. So if you want to lock something, you can lock the power. So the power is actually locked now. And now when I try to even flip the switch right here to turn it off, it doesn't actually turn off. I have to unplug the power or unlock it if I want. Also under here, under access control, I don't have it connected in the back, but if you do want to be able to control this with something like wireless workbench, you're going to want to make sure that's enabled here. And you also can lock the front panel. So if I lock the front panel and I try to go in and change basically anything, it says that the front panel is locked. So I have to unlock it in order to make those adjustments. Next up, we have the fan. You can either set this to auto or just always be on. I just leave that on auto personally. Display. Here's where you can change the brightness of the screen. I just personally leave that on auto. And you can say that the display will go to sleep after a certain amount of time of you not using that. I personally just like to have that off. Next up is receiver Showlink network ID update. This is so you can set up an ID network and you can control unlinked ADXR receivers without needing to do like an IR sync. I honestly don't know when you would really use this. I'm just going to post this snippet from the manual. Pause it if you want to find out how to use this menu. Just leave it on FFFF if you do not want to use this feature. You can also update the firmware on the body packs. So if I wanted to update this body pack, I would go under here and I can either update with IR and I would just put it in front of the infrared window. But something that's really nice is if you have Showlink connected, you can actually update via Showlink and just send it that way instead of over IR. Very, very cool. You can also see stuff about your license. The user presets are actually really helpful. You can restore a user preset. So these are the 3 different bands that I've used this with. So if I wanted to reload for my 90s setup, I would just go into there and hit confirm and it will have to reboot if I did this, but all of the names, the settings, everything that I have are saved based on each different configuration. So that's really cool. And I've definitely used that. But you can save all of your settings and then restore it later. And you also can delete one. You can also do a full factory reset if you want, and just see a little bit more information about this unit and the version that you're on, the RF band, and stuff like that. And that should be everything on the transmitter. Now let's go over all of the settings on the body pack. So first menu is radio. First one is frequency. This is where you can manually set either the group channel or the frequency. So if I want to set it to group 3, channel 40, for example, I could do that. Or I can also manually set the frequency if I needed to do that as well. And I can also change the subgroup if I'm using wideband mode. So I could set this to 1, 2, 3, or 4 if I wanted to. Next one is the spectrum scan, which we already did earlier. Remember, you can go down here and go to recall if you need to recall it. One more down, we have advanced RF. So I showed you the RF band. Make sure that you're set to the correct band. Next one is the transmission mode. So this is set to 4-channel wideband. When you do a sync, it's automatically going to update this. But if you need to set this manually, you also have that as an option. So if I need to set this to narrowband or analog or something like that, I could do this. You shouldn't have to do that because it'll update that when you sync. Next up is the RF pad. You can actually set a pad on the RF of just this pack. If you need to, you can set up an RF pad on just this pack. But I'm going to leave that just on 0. And next up, you have the antenna. So you can have this working with both antenna A and B. You could set this to only antenna A. Very nice that they give you an arrow, or only antenna B if you wanted. I'm not quite sure when you would want to use that, but the option is there. If you are in analog mode, you'll also have this extra feature for squelch. You can set high, mid, low, very low, just the pilot tone, or have it off. So squelch is set if the RF signal strength drops below the squelch point. Instead of hearing awful analog noise in your ear, the audio just cuts out, which is good to protect your hearing. They only have this on analog because you don't have to worry about that with digital wireless, because with digital wireless, you won't get noise as the RF signal diminishes. You get perfect audio quality until you lose that signal. So another reason to go digital. But if you do have to use this in analog, you do have a squelch setting down here. That's everything under the advanced RF menu. And the radio menu. Let's go ahead and scroll down and go to audio. Here we went over the mode, so this is reset it to stereo or mono. We went over that earlier. You do have an equalizer in here, so if you want to do that, you're going to have to enable it. And now you can go in and edit. If you wanted to boost some of the lows, you can go in here. But let's say you wanted to increase it by 6 decibels at 100 hertz. For the low, you actually can't change it. It's just set to 100 hertz, but if I go under my low mids, that's where I can choose the frequency of the low mid. So let's say I wanted to set it to 630 and I can set the Q and the gain of that frequency if I wanted to. So you have that as an option. You can also do that on your high mids. You can change the center frequency of those, but on your low and your high, those are set. Next up, we have the volume lock. So this will lock the volume and it'll tell you where I'm currently at. So if I set it about halfway, I can actually turn the lock on. And now no matter what I try to change on here, it's set to 5.6. You also do have a volume limit. This is pretty cool. So you can say what value can you not go above. So let's say I'm going to turn this limiter on. And what value do I not want to go above? So let's say I don't want to ever go above level 6. Now you can see I'm currently on 3.7, 4.6, 5.9. If I try to go past this, it only goes to 6. It literally will not let me go further than that. Might be helpful if you're ever worried that someone's going to accidentally bump this and it's going to be really loud in your ears. We also went over the gain trim and the limiter earlier. Those are all of your audio settings. So that was radio and audio. Let's go under the utilities. So under the utility, you have queue mode. So when I go into queue mode, it's going to ask me to unlink if I am linked, which is okay. And it says I currently have an empty queue list and I need to sync. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go to each of the channels and sync. So I'm going to send the Scott channel. And then I'm going to push next. I'm going to sync the Danielle channel. Sorry, the antenna's in the way. I'm going to hit next, sync the Jason channel, and then hit next and sync the Trevor channel. So I've sent all 4 of those frequencies and channels to this queue list. Now, while I'm on here, what I can do is I can cycle through the different channels. So this is helpful for the monitor tech to be able to check everyone's monitor mix. They can easily just check to see if something's going wrong. So if the bass player is going, hey, something's wrong with my mix, they can quickly jump to that person's mix, listen, and then you can diagnose problems. You can also go in here and do things like replace the queue or copy the queue. You can also delete some of them. And when you're done, you can just exit queue mode. Very helpful for monitor engineers to have that. So some more utilities. Device ID, this is where I can also give it a name if I wanted to, for like Showlink and wireless workbench and stuff like that. Locks, same idea. I can lock the power as well as the menu or both of them. So if I lock the power, you can't turn it off. You can still adjust the level, but you can't turn it off. Menu if I don't want anyone messing around with some of the settings in here, or you can lock both of them. Link info, you can see if you're linked or unlinked to the transmitter. So if I was linked, I can go to unlink and disconnect it from the transmitter, and now they are no longer synced together. You also do have Showlink test, and then you have Showlink net ID. That's obviously with Showlink. With the Showlink test, it will show you the strength of the signal with Showlink. And what you can do is you can walk around the venue or the location and you can see if the signal drops. And if it does, you can click and you can send a marker. So just making sure that Showlink is able to work all around the venue or the location that you're playing at. This was that Showlink Network ID client that I didn't quite understand. This is how you can set that on the body pack. You can see information on the battery, such as health, cycles, the temperature of it, the voltage, and so on and so forth. Standby, you can turn that on and then the RF and audio will be muted without having to power the device off. Power saving mode is definitely helpful. If you turn on power saving mode, it'll automatically go into power saving mode when the headphones are disconnected. I think that's definitely worth leaving on in general. And you can also say turn off if it never receives signal for 5 minutes, 30 minutes, 60 minutes, something like that. I'd actually just personally just leave that off. You can hit identify when you're using it with wireless workbench. That's mostly going to be when you're using it with wireless workbench. You'll see it flash on wireless workbench. Home options, you can see just the name. So if I set this to name, now back here, it'll just say the name. So you can choose what you want to see on the home screen. Name and group and channel, name and the device ID, just the frequency. You have a couple of different options in here. I personally like it just on the default setting of the name and the frequency. You also can choose the brightness of the LED. This is not of this, that is up here on the top. So if I change that high, medium, low, or off, now you can see that that green light up there is no longer lit up. You do have your battery indicator right here and your RF reading, so you can make sure that it is getting a strong RF signal, but you can turn those off if you don't want those lights to be on. You can also have the display timeout after a certain amount of time. After 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 15, or 30 minutes, or leave it always on. I like to have that on 2 minutes personally. You can also reset everything and see a little bit more information. And that is everything on the Axient Digital PSM in-ear monitor receiver packs. So that's basically it. I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you are still here, I'm assuming you found the video helpful. Do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. It truly does help out support the channel, and I would appreciate it. Also, if you do decide that this system is right for you and your needs and you're interested in purchasing it, I will have purchase links down below in the description. Those are 2 free ways to support the channel, and also consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this in the future. I have been using this live over the last couple of weeks. It truly does sound incredible. It does live up to the hype. You don't have to deal with the noise of analog wireless in-ear monitor systems. That's so nice. It sounds so full. Stereo separation is great. I got to let some of my bandmates use it, and that was actually the first time that they actually got to use stereo in-ear monitor mixes, so some of them were really excited about that. I did test the range at one of the shows. I just went for a walk as far as I could until I started to get dropouts. I got so far until the signal finally dropped out, and again, this was on just 20 milliwatt settings, so 5 milliwatts just from my pack on just half-wave antennas. This isn't even a directional or helical antenna. I got so far. It's pretty incredible how far the system can go. Once again, I'm truly grateful that Shure sent this over so I could check out the holy grail of in-ear monitor systems. This system is truly incredible. I'm excited to continue to use it. Many thanks to Shure for sending this over. This system truly is incredible and does live up to the hype. If you are interested in checking out a video on the Axient Digital for the wireless mics, body packs, and stuff like that, I do have a video going over that as well. And also, somewhat recently, Shure did release the Shure SLX-D Quad system. This is a pretty cool wireless quad system for a quad receiver for microphones and guitars and stuff like that. You can check out both of those videos by clicking the links on your screen now. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on my social media pages at Scott Yule Music. Thank you again for watching the video. If you have any other cool gear you want to check out, please leave me as a comment down below. Thank you guys again for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.